Are you thinking of applying for a story artist position at either feature or television animation? There's a high demand of story artists in the animation industry, but there's also a high amount of competition. Hey guys, it's Taniko. For this video, I'll be giving some tips and advice on how to make a strong story portfolio for both feature and television animation. For those who don't know, a storyboard artist is someone who makes story panels based on a prompt or a script, and that person translates that prompt or script into visuals. The work of storyboarding is similar to that of comics, but instead of a page consisting of many panels, each panel is a representation of what you see on the screen. These panels act as a foundation of the show or film as it moves into the animation production. So you're probably thinking of making a story portfolio or a storyboard portfolio for TV animation. So let's talk about formatting. When it comes to hard copy presentation, I like to use 11x17 tabloid size folder-based portfolios when I do send it out to studios, but a normal 8x5x11 can work too. I like to use Itoya art portfolios because you can just slip in the slides of your work in these sleeves. You can purchase them online or at art stores like Blick Art Materials and sometimes Walmart. Nowadays, a lot of recruiters look at your work online. In fact, having a website is a must nowadays. If you have a blog or a personal website, you can make a digital copy of your portfolio pages and place them up there online. You can include other works that can't be put into hard copies, such as animatics or films you've made, and that could totally help your story application. So now that we have formatting out of the way, let's talk about the must-haves and the don'ts and the extra advice when building your story portfolio. First of all, let me start with the must-haves. These are things I feel you absolutely must have in your storyboarding or story portfolio. You ready? Alright, let's go. Number 1. Have storyboards. Around 2 to 3 different story sequences. Well, this is the main job after all. The work of a story artist or a storyboard artist is, of course, to do storyboards. So put storyboards, dummy. I would recommend at the very least 2 sequences, but 3 is a good number to shoot for. Ideally, each sequence is usually close to 100 panels. I would suggest each of these sequences have different genre and tone, for it can show your capabilities of handling different types of stories and shows. For example, you could have one sequence that's action, completely action-based, one that's comedy, and another that's drama. Consider having boards that are purely pantomime, and some with dialogue. Experiment with different styles of filmmaking too. Another big note I'd like to add is to make sure your character acting and performance and the expressions they express are clear. In animation, we deal a lot with characters, so make sure those characters shine in your portfolio. Number 2, keep it in a clear, readable format. Story recruiters usually flip through these portfolios really fast, so make it easy to read. Ideally, I like to have 4x4 or 5x3 story panels per page when dealing with my sequences. Give each panel some space below the panels for dialogue to be written in. The reason why you want to have multiple panels in one page is so that the recruiter can see how all your panels can relate to each other and how you manage with shot management and cutting between shots. One thing I'd advise is to imagine yourself in the recruiter's shoes. You don't want to give the recruiter more work just to look at your portfolio or just to navigate through that portfolio. Number 3, be economic with your panels. Don't have so many panels that just represent animation frames of one shot. When making a story portfolio for recruiters to flip through, be economic on how much drawing there is per panel. Each panel must have a purpose of story change. Having 8 panels to show a character doing one simple action is a waste of time and space. Save that stuff for animatics. Number 4, put your contact information on the front, the end, and other parts of your portfolio. There are so many times recruiters see a potential storyboard artist but cannot find any contact information for the artist. Don't make it hard for the recruiter to find your contact information. If they can't find it, they'll easily pass you to continue searching for another candidate or artist. And that artist may just beat you because they have that contact info up there. Number 5, have a website or an online version of your portfolio. Like I said earlier, recruiters nowadays surf on Twitter, Tumblr, Blogspot, and most story artists nowadays usually get recruited this way. The benefit of having a website is that it is weightless and that they can make copies of your work if they need to, and that you have a version of your own. You can also have video files on there such as animatics, your films, or other pieces of work. If they see value in the work that you post regularly, that is also a good way to get story gigs. Have a website so recruiters can revisit your portfolio. Now, with the main stuff out of the way, let's talk about elements that will make your portfolio stronger. Anyone can make a story portfolio and do storyboarding work. I believe that. But what else can you do to make your portfolio stand out? What are things that you can add that will show your voice as an artist? To me, these are notes that are debatable, but here are at least my 2 cents that will just put you out there in the sea of competition. Number 1, thumbnails of your story sequences. One of the most common notes I got when making my story portfolio was to include sketches and thumbnails of my storyboards. Remember, this is to show the recruiter or studio looking at your work understand your thoughts process. They want to see how you flesh out your sequences, or how you roughly lay out your compositions, and how you experimented with different approaches before settling on the one that you chose for the final product. Imagine you're working with a director, and that director wants you to just keep experimenting with different approaches and shots. They want to see how you could work with that director when making a story sequence for a movie or a show. Number 2, have story beats. Story beats are panels that summarize the whole story. They can be about 4 to 8 panels. Story beats are great because it gives you a limited count of panels to tell your whole story in just a few drawings. These can elaborate more on how the characters relate to each other, their interactions, and the change in scenario or story. Imagine getting a big story like Jason and the Argonauts, and try to summarize that whole story in under 10 drawings. Number 3, have any other supplemental material or personal work that supports your storytelling abilities. I talked about having extra material like story beats and thumbnails, but I also feel like portfolios are personal representations of your work. If you do character designs with great acting, communication, and personality, include those. If you have samples of comic strips, include them. As long as there's some sort of story element to it, it makes you more than just a story artist. For myself, my short films counted as supplemental material. Animatics are great too. Live drawing is optional, but if you do want to include it, make sure the gestures are bold, loose, and has some great communication and posing. Number 4, have a studio in mind and gear towards your aesthetics. There are plenty of animation studios out there, but each of those studios have their own aesthetics and styles. Take this one with a grain of salt. If you want to work at a feature studio like Pixar, Disney, DreamWorks, Blue Sky, or Illumination, do your research and look up the story artists from each of those studios. The same goes for TV studios such as Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, Disney TV, and DreamWorks TV. Remember, a studio like Adult Swim or Titmouse have very different aesthetics from Disney TV, and therefore you have to market yourself to whichever studio you want to get into. Number 5, keep your best work the first thing and the last thing of your portfolio. Never start with a subpar sequence. If this happens, the recruiter might just stop looking and move on to another portfolio. Start with a strong storyboard sequence, for this encourages them to look further. Subpar material or material not as good should be placed in the middle so it is less noticeable than the first impression of your portfolio. You also want to end your portfolio with a strong piece of material. So those are my top advices when making a story portfolio. Now, you may be wondering if there's anything that you should avoid or just not do, and I do have some thoughts on that. Number 1, don't add too much. 2 to 3 sequences is enough for me. Don't add all the work you've ever done. Only select your strongest. Recruiters don't have the time to look through all of your storyboards you've ever done. Make it easy to read. Too much work leads to the effect of the portfolio being monotonous and forgettable. Number 2, avoid making an all general purpose portfolio. Recruiters are looking for individuals to fit in specific job positions. If you make a portfolio that has everything ranging from storyboards to character designs to layouts to viz dev and some animation frames, they'll have no idea where your strongest suite is or what you want to do. While some smaller studios are okay with this, it's best to have a portfolio for each of those focused disciplines. One time, there was a student who tried to make his character design portfolio resemble a children's storybook, or a story portfolio that tried to resemble a diary. There are 2 major problems with this. Recruiters will have absolutely no idea what you're going for, and that you basically lock yourself in certain parameters by locking yourself to a theme. Be straightforward and simple. Just show the work, just show the sequences, and that's all good to go. So my final thoughts: show your portfolios to peers, friends, and maybe your mentors to get some more feedback with your portfolio. Other than that, I wish you the best of luck. I hope you guys get some callbacks from Industry Day or your portfolio submissions. I hope you guys get somewhere with it. So those are my top tips when it comes to making a story portfolio for animation. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe to my channel if you guys like my stuff. If you guys want to see more content like this, be sure to check out my Patreon page and give me a support. Doing so will give you some perks. Read more about those perks on the site.